Hey fantasy fans, it's Dan here with Treebeard Book Reviews, and today I'm going to be reviewing Tress of the Emerald Sea, Brandon Sanderson's first secret novel that has been released. It was released on January 1st, 2023. I read the book in one day. I was super excited to get it, and so this is going to be a spoiler-free review for that book. It's my first review of 2023, my first book that I've read in 2023. I'm super excited to get you this early, so let's talk about Tress of the Emerald Sea.
Thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel and making it the best it can be.
Alright guys, so let's get into this review. I just want to say one thing first. I'm a big Brandon Sanderson fan. I have liked a lot of his work. Some of his, not all of his books have worked for me, but this was a good, fun novel. So what I would like to hear is, what is your favorite Brandon Sanderson novel? Please comment down below. Let me know what's your favorite. And if you've reading Tress or if you've read Tress, obviously leave any kind of spoilers out of the comments for it. If you have read it, this is going to be a spoiler-free review. I probably will have a video that comes out that is going in more in-depth with the spoilers, but I really want to talk about what Tress is about. Alright, so Tress of the Emerald Sea is a YA novel by Brandon Sanderson set in the Cosmere. This is part of his secret novel collection that he released last year, the biggest Kickstarter in the world, the most successful Kickstarter. I don't know how many 100,000 novels he sold. I think it was 125,000, so a lot of novels. And he released this book to his backers on January 1st in the ebook and audio version. So I, backed for the all-in. I backed for everything. I'm going to be getting a box every month from Brandon, which I'll be unboxing on this channel every month. So looking forward to that. I don't have my physical copy. I read this, actually a bit of mix of ebook and the audiobook edition. The audiobook is narrated by Michael Kramer. Such a fantastic job. I will say the ebook is just as good because it's got some beautiful artwork in there. And there's one thing that I didn't catch, but my wife caught, and she mentioned it to me, is the chapter headings. So we're going to be talking about how Tress, travels through this book, and there are multiple seas, because it's Tress of the Emerald Sea, and she does travel through multiple seas. And the colors change on the chapter headings based on what sea she's in, so that's pretty cute. So it's a little not Easter egg, but just a nice little thing that they didn't have to do in the printing of this book. All right, so how would I describe Tress? So Tress is really kind of told as a fairy tale, and it's done as a frame narrative, as Hoyt is the narrator, and he's telling the tale of Tress, and he is actually involved in this tale. He is a character in this story, and he's recounting Tress's adventure. But how I would really kind of compare this, or kind of give an analogy, I would say that this is, Stardust, the movie, meets like Princess Bride, and they had a child, and it was Tress of the Emerald Sea. So I really enjoyed this story. It's definitely probably one of the better YA novels by Brandon Sanderson for me. Oh, I mean, the only one I've really read is Skyward. I was not a fan of that. If you guys watched my least 10 favorite books of 2022, that was on there. I'm not a big fan of YA novels, and I just, because I'm older, I don't particularly enjoy that genre anymore. And this one I thought was fairly nice, and I wasn't just super annoyed with all the characters, so it ticks a box for me there in being a decent YA. One thing I will say about Tress, it's a very cozy read. The thing is, there's not a lot there. If you're going in expecting a lot of Cosmere connections, or a very deep story, or something you can really kind of sink your teeth into and just go right down that rabbit hole, this really isn't that story. It's very surface level, kind of like, how Tress sails the Spore Seas, just gliding along the surface, and that's really all the story. It's very surface level. But what the whole premise of the story is, it's girl meets boy, girl falls in love with boy, boy is taken away and captured by an evil sorceress, and then girl has to go on an adventure. So it's pretty much Princess Bride, but the other way around, and the princess is given more agency, which is kind of nice. So I really liked, Tress's role in this story, and I thought Brandon crafted a very fun adventure. It's, like I said, it's nothing new, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's very fun, and I did enjoy my time with it. Alright, so one thing I want to discuss now is the characters. There are some great characters in this story. First, I want to talk about Tress. Tress is a great heroine. She's a great female lead, but she's also very familiar. She's a very familiar Brandon Sanderson character. I don't think he breaks a lot of new ground with her. She's kind of really pulled from a lot of his other stories. Like I see a lot of like Siri from Warbreaker, some of Vin, just some of these other characters you've met before in like Brandon novels. And he just kind of like, it seemed like he cobbled Tress together out of like one of those type of characters where, she has her little quirks where she likes her cups. And but I don't think she's anything new. She's nothing groundbreaking, which is fine, which is nice for kind of a YA, character. Like, it's just, she's a very simple character, which is kind of nice. But also, again, like, I don't think she's super memorable in that way because you've seen her before and seen her 1,000 times, I think. But Tress was still good. I did enjoy my time with her, but I wouldn't say she's going to be a standout in the pack of Brandon Sanderson characters. All right, so the next character I want to talk about, I'm not going to name them because that would obviously be getting into spoilers, but I will say that there is a Rouse in this story. Not if you know the reference from, or a Roos, I guess, depending on your pronunciation, from The Princess Bride. We have a rodent of usual size in this story. This character is very fun. I think most readers will enjoy this character. I did enjoy this character. Again, I'm not a big fan of talking kind of animals, but this character is good. I'm not going to mention their name. You'll know who they are when they show up, and they are a lot of fun. With this story being a nautical adventure, Tress is maybe not sailing the seas, but she's sailing the spore seas. And, with any kind of nautical adventure, there is a crew on the ship. And I will say the crew is very good on here. There is 3 crew members in particular that you'll meet who are really good supporting characters. They all kind of support Tress in a different way, and they have their own kind of interactions with Tress. Again, I think one of the things that suffer for this novel and all these characters is that, Brandon is a large format writer. He's that type of author where it's like, yeah, he needs probably like 300,000 words to flesh out a story, right? And this is, like 100,000, maybe 120,000 words for Brandon. It's like 384 pages, and the font's fairly big. So it's nothing like, it's definitely outside of the format that I think Brandon is most successful in. I think he has a hard time telling short stories because he's most successful when he's doing these grand world building with all these complex magic systems and, deep diving into characters and their kind of trauma or any kind of baggage that they have. And he just doesn't have enough time in this story to kind of give you that. So that's why maybe everything seems surface level. But this is a great for, like people who are new to Cosmere or kind of want to jump into a Brandon novel. You don't need to have a lot of information, I think. So, and you don't need all that backstory because there is some Cosmere connections, but not huge ones that are just going to blow the back of your head off, which is kind of nice. So, but, good characters. Tress is great. Charlie, he is mentioned in the back of the book. He is the love interest of Tress. He's mentioned on the back of the book, and then, I mentioned it's where boy meets girl or girl meets boy. And, Charlie is that love interest that Tress is kind of searching after. And I do like Charlie. He comes into play a little bit in this book, but the focus really is on Tress. So the one thing I want to get into now is talking about world building and magic in this world. So Brandon's done some pretty creative world building in Tress of the Emerald Sea. He's added a new magic system, or made a magical world filled with aethers. And this planet Lumar, I don't think it's expressly told as Lumar, but I think it's somewhere. I picked it up somewhere in the novel that the planet was called Lumar. That's not a spoiler. You don't really need to know what the planet's called or what its name is. It doesn't really matter. But the planet of Lumar, it's affected by aethers. There's several different aethers that you only learn about probably half of them in this story. It's a pretty cool magic system where, the aethers are kind of in the forms of spores, and these spores create seas across this planet. And the inhabitants of this planet sail across these spores in boats that are lined with metals to protect them from the deadliness of these spores. And the spores, once they come in contact with water, they violently react, either, creating vines or creating like crystals. And it's really kind of cool, but again, it's really not up to the level of like normal Brandon magic systems, because usually he's like, right down the rabbit hole, dirtying his fluffy white tail, like telling you about how each of these magics interact. And you only really learn about half of them in this book, which is good because, you're like, the focus isn't always on the magic, the focus is on the character and the stories. So it's kind of nice to have that focus. But if you're looking for that type of world building and magic system in Tress, it's not there. So that is one little knock. Like, if you really like magic systems and you really want to see that, it's not fully fleshed out there. And again, maybe that's just done at the frame narrative because, Hoyd is the narrator. He's not a super reliable narrator, and you can kind of tell this from what's happening to Hoyd in the story. So I think it's, I didn't mind it, but that could be for, for people who really like the magic systems in Brandon, it's really not there. The one thing I will say about the Aethers, which is, again, spoiler free, is just they feel like a very lucky magic system in a sense that, like, humans are 90% water, and it's Brandon clearly chooses who gets affected with the Aethers and who doesn't, so it can be kind of a little plot armory sometimes, but again, it's a minor gripe, to be honest. But that's something to consider when you are like thinking about how the magic is working in this world. It is a YA novel, so there's not too many large themes at play. Again, it's kind of mirroring like Princess Bride, but in the opposite direction. But one thing I would say, like the one big theme that is present in this book is that when you go on an adventure changes you, and you're not going to be the same person you are when you first set out on that adventure. It's a really nice story. But, again, it's a very simple story, and it's a YA novel, so, it's going to be simple. So, go into the book with those kind of expectations. So, who would I recommend Tress of the Emerald Sea for? Really anyone. It doesn't require a lot of knowledge or greater Cosmere connections. It's good for kind of a younger audience. It really is kind of a YA novel, so go into that with that expectation. Maybe knowing who the narrator Hoyd is might add more to the experience, but it's not really required. Hoyd kind of tells you who he is, and characters in that story tell you who Hoyd is. So I think it is actually a pretty decent entry level book into the Cosmere. So this could be a good jumping in point for really anyone. I would still probably recommend reading like Mistborn or maybe Elantris first. But if you pick this up as your first novel for Brandon, and you're younger, or this is your first novel with him, it's probably a good ride for you. And I would recommend anyone to really pick it up. And if you're a Cosmere fan, you're already going to read it. If you like Brandon's work, you're probably already going to read it. So the thing is, I think you'd have to like Brandon's version of comedy. And this is where I'm going to kind of get into the negatives of this book. Is I really don't like Brandon's comedy. It just doesn't work for me. And that's more of I think on me than anyone. His comedy just doesn't connect with me, and I think it's because it's trying to be Pratchettian, but it just doesn't work, and it's just not up to that level of Pratchett. And I would love to laugh at the stories, and I think there's 9 out of the 10 jokes Brandon will tell, maybe one will land, and he'll get a chuckle out of me, nothing crazy. So. There is a lot of comedy in this book, or there's a lot of forced comedy, and it didn't work for me. I really didn't like that. So that's one of the negatives for me. This could be a positive for you, but for me it was a negative. Sometimes he does throw in these Cosmere connections that were very heavy-handed, I felt. They just square peg, round hole, just stuff it through. I think if you're a big Cosmere fan, you'll like them. But I really don't. I really like my Cosmere connections to be subtle, and it seems like subtlety's kind of gone out the window with all these new works, with Lost Metal and all these secret projects where it's just boom, everything is a nail, and the hammer is Cosmere is gonna bash that nail through. So, I said I did say this is a good entry point for for any reader. There isn't a lot of Cosmere connections, but when they are there, it's just bash Cosmere connection, see it, and it's just okay, I get it, thanks Brandon, I'm not an idiot, but I don't like that. I liked it when it was more subtle. So that's another thing. Again, this is a very YA novel. I've said this a few times now. Very surface level. The characters are surface level. The story's surface level. It's a very familiar story. Very familiar characters. There's not a lot there. I just don't think Brandon he's not really playing to his strengths when he's writing this type of format, this shorter story. So I don't think there was a lot of meat there. And there was one thing at the end that I wasn't a fan of with some of the technologies referenced. I just didn't like it. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. But that's such a minor gripe, and I'm not going to talk about it what it is. But when you get to the end of the book, you'll understand what it is. So those are the negatives for me. Strengths, really, it's a good YA novel. Quick. Little story, easy read it in one day like I did. The world building's decent, but it's, again, typical Brandon world building, throwing in different magic systems. Likable characters that you root for with Tress. It's just a cozy, warm read. Nothing too serious, and actually, it actually surpassed my expectations. So if I were to rank this book, I gave it a 3 stars on Goodreads, and for my rating system, it'd be a bookshelf book. It's good, but it's not really something that's going to be super memorable for me. I just did enjoy it, and I think a lot of people will enjoy it in general. So that's it, guys. That's my review of Tress of the Emerald Seas. I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope you enjoyed this review. And yeah, please comment down below. Like I said, what is your favorite Brandon Sanderson book? Comment down below. Let me know why. And as always, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.